Is being a landlord in New Jersey right for me? If you've been eyeing New Jersey real estate as a way to build wealth by either turning your primary home into an investment property or purposely investing in rental properties, you're not alone. Owning a rental property can create cash flow, equity growth, and it provides tax advantages, but it also demands time, know-how, and a real tolerance for risk. The question shouldn't be, is being a landlord good? But rather, is being a landlord a good fit for me? Hi, I'm Kevin Fletcher, president and broker of PMI Prime Property, a professional property management firm serving northern and central New Jersey in the areas of residential, multifamily, commercial, and homeowner association management. In this video blog, we'll take a very candid look at what it takes to be a landlord in New Jersey and review some questions that you and your family should discuss before taking the big leap into the world of real estate investing. Let's first start by taking a quick gut check and evaluating 8 items to consider before you buy an investment property or convert your existing home into a rental. In fact, did you know that one of the easiest points of entry into becoming a landlord is to simply convert your existing home into a rental when you either purchase a new home or relocate to a different area? First, how much time do you have and what is your ability to respond to emergencies? Are you ready, able, and willing to respond to midnight leaks, heating outages, or a broken lock the same day? Do you have a network of vendors that you can call upon to address maintenance issues when they occur, especially when it's an emergency? Next, how much money do you have in the bank that is readily accessible? Do you have a reserve of operating funds to cover 3 to 6 months worth of rent, mortgage, and insurance, taxes? Similarly, do you have funds to cover the cost of preparing the property between tenants? Things that might include painting, cleaning, property updates or upgrades, especially if it's an older property. Next, are you a people person? Are you comfortable screening applicants lawfully, setting expectations, documenting issues, and having firm but fair conversations? Are you able to defer personal judgment on a person to focus only on the facts about their qualifications? How comfortable are you researching and learning about regulations and laws? New Jersey is a tenant-friendly and rules-heavy state. Are you willing to learn and follow New Jersey's laws against discrimination, or NJLAD, New Jersey real estate laws in the areas such as how to manage security deposits, rental registrations, lead safety and housing inspections, habitability and eviction rules, in addition to the federal fair housing laws and the Americans with Disabilities Act? How do you feel about local town government? Each town has different rules and regulations for how they manage rental housing within their municipality. Are you willing to invest time in learning these requirements and tracking them to ensure that annual requirements are met in order to avoid fines? And what's your risk tolerance? Could you handle a non-paying tenant, a vacancy for 2 months, or, surprise, a $6,000 sewer line repair bill without panic? And how are you at record keeping? Are you willing to keep meticulous records, such as lease files, notices, ledgers, inspections, and photos? Are you going to manage yourself, or are you going to hire professionals to help? If you hire a property manager, are you willing to step aside and let them professionally manage the property, or are you that one that needs to be involved in all the discussions and decisions? If you self-manage, will you use a bookkeeper, a super, an attorney when needed? Do you have a list of vendors and backups to call when the inevitable happens and something breaks? If most of these feel like a fit and don't have you running for the hills, then you might have an appetite for being a landlord in New Jersey. But if several of these questions really feel like a stretch for you and your family, then strongly consider partnering with professionals if you want to move forward or hitting pause. Next, let's take a look at some situations where you probably shouldn't become a landlord, at least not yet. These next scenarios should likely be red flags for you that being a landlord is not a good fit now. First and foremost is that you need immediate, guaranteed cash flow. This is one that we see all too often and can create a tremendous amount of stress for the landlord and the management company. Because even great properties have vacancies, turn costs, and yes, they have unexpected repairs. If you are dependent on the rent payment each and every month to pay the mortgage, the insurance, and taxes, being a landlord is not a good fit until you have more surplus funds on hand. Now, this may be a different story if you plan on buying a 2 or a 3 family home and maybe living in one of the units. Next, you dread conflict. It's a reality in this business, just like with kids, that landlords sometimes have to say no. We have to enforce late fees or file eviction in court. And if the thought of that is unbearable, this role will be extremely stressful for you. Too many times, I've seen a landlord take it personally when these issues arise, and oftentimes it's not really the tenant's fault, but a result of a critical, life-changing event that they may be dealing with at that current point in time. Next, you resist checklist and paperwork. Compliance isn't optional in New Jersey, and missing a notice or form can cost real money. Being a landlord is much more than just collecting a rent check, and there are many laws that we need to be compliant with, which come down from the federal, state, and municipal levels. Failure to adhere to these laws, obtaining required inspections and permits, may have very real consequences with monetary penalties. Next, you're undercapitalized. If a $5,000 to a $10,000 repair or a few months of rent non-payment would sink you, you really need to focus on saving first and building up your reserves. Ideally, you should have between 3 to 6 months of operating funds available in the bank to cover the unexpected. You expect set it and forget it. Rentals are a business. They're not an investment bond. They reward active, informed ownership and really require direct involvement with the tenant and the property at regular intervals. Next, let's take a look at some of the core laws and compliance basics that you'll need to adhere to as a landlord. When it comes to being a landlord, especially in New Jersey, there are many laws that impact what we do on a daily basis that, as I mentioned, come down from the federal, state, and municipal levels. Compliance with these various laws is critical to being a good landlord and, more importantly, avoiding penalties. Now, I'm going to review some of the critical ones, but keep in mind this is not an all-inclusive list. First, let's look at the Federal Fair Housing Act, or FHA, and the New Jersey Laws Against Discrimination, or NJLAD. The Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968 provides some significant protections against discrimination in both the sale and rental of real estate. These protections are based on what are referred to as protected classes, which include race, color, national origin, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, familial status, and disability. It also requires that the landlord accept reasonable accommodations, which might include allowing an emotional support animal even in a no-pets property, and in many cases, reasonable modifications for disability. In the case of reasonable modifications, these are at the tenant's expense, and they are required to return the property back to as-is condition at the end of their tenancy. Examples of a reasonable modification request might include the installation of grab rails in the hallways or perhaps in the bathroom for somebody that has mobility issues, or a ramp to enter the property if one of the tenants uses a wheelchair, or perhaps a modification to a bathroom sink cabinet to allow a wheelchair to slide under so they can use the sink. The New Jersey Laws Against Discrimination, or NJLAD, go much further when it comes to anti-discriminatory activities. In housing, for example, New Jersey explicitly protects sources of lawful income, which means that you may not refuse applicants simply because they use vouchers or other lawful rental assistance, whether it's Section 8 or a HAP voucher, disability payment, or alimony and child support payments, to cover all or a portion of their rental obligation. In addition to the protected classes under the FHA, the New Jersey laws extend protections to additional classes, which include creed, national origin, ancestry, nationality, age, pregnancy, marital status, gender expression, disability, and liability for U.S. military service. The intention of these two laws are to ensure that everyone is treated fairly when it comes to their housing needs and are afforded equal opportunities to quality housing. As a housing provider, we have a moral and ethical obligation to support this and do our part to treat everyone fairly. Next, we'll look at the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, applies to places of public accommodation, which for most landlords means areas like your leasing office or any space open to the public, but not the private apartments themselves. Accessibility standards and service animal rules in those public-facing areas also come from the ADA. When we get to the inside of the residences and common areas limited to the residence, the FHA's reasonable accommodation framework then governs. This is why the FHA governs the rules around emotional support animals, while the ADA governs service animals like a seeing eye dog or a seizure dog. Next, what if I want to evict a tenant or not renew the lease? In New Jersey rentals, you cannot simply evict a tenant because you don't like them or the lease term ends. You need to have one of the statutory good cause reasons, which include things like non-payment of rent or other rent-related charges, substantial lease violations, or when an owner plans to reoccupy the property. You must also follow strict notice and filing procedures as well. As we mentioned previously, New Jersey is a tenant-friendly state, but evictions become much more cut and dry when non-payment of rent is the leading cause and assuming the landlord has done their part to properly maintain the property. In New Jersey, security deposits are both capped and regulated. The New Jersey Security Deposit Trust Act caps residential security deposits at 1.5 times the monthly rent and regulates that those security deposits must be in an interest-bearing account in the tenant's name. This requires setting up a landlord-tenant trust account and collecting a W-9 from the tenant, which is also then filed with the bank so they can report the accrued interest to the government. The Act also requires verbiage which must be included in your lease as it relates to where the funds are being held, what the average interest rate is, and the account number for the main holding account. Remember that a security deposit is tenant money that the landlord is simply holding in trust in the event of a potential breach of the lease. The Security Deposit Trust Act also regulates that the interest must be paid out within the month of January for the previous year's accrued interest or applied to the January rent, and a full refund or accounting of the withholding due to a lease breach within 30 days after moving out of the property. As a landlord, you are also required to register the rental property. Under the Landlord Identity Law, NJSA 46-827, owners of one-unit and non-owner occupied two-unit buildings must file a registration statement with the municipal clerk and provide a copy to the tenants. Multiple unit dwellings, which have 3 or more units, must register with the New Jersey Division of Consumer Affairs Bureau of Housing. The specific form used and the type of inspections required as part of this process do vary from town to town. Some, if not most towns, are relatively straightforward when it comes to both the rental registration and obtaining a continued certificate of occupancy, usually just requiring the Fire Prevention Bureau to conduct a fire safety inspection. But there are several towns which have very comprehensive housing inspection processes that you need to comply with. Once you have filed the registration, key proof is you'll need that in the event you have to go to landlord court to regain possession of the property back. There are also required documents that you need to provide to tenants. New Jersey requires the distribution of the state's Truth in Renting booklet to tenants as either the hard copy pamphlet or an electronic version via PDF. It's also your quick reference on habitability requirements and landlord-tenant basics, which is worth reading cover to cover when you're new. Of course, this does not take the place of the rules and regulations as outlined by the Department of Consumer Affairs in New Jersey. Get the lead out. No, this is not a calling for your favorite 1970s rock band, but a requirement to obtain a lead-safe inspection for all rental properties built prior to 1978. The law was signed into effect by Governor Murphy in 2023, and it requires all homes built prior to 1978 to pass periodic lead safety inspections. These inspections are required at tenant turnover or every 2 years, whichever comes first. The inspection type will vary between a visual inspection or a dust wipe inspection, and it really depends on the town that the property is located in. Those requirements are outlined by the New Jersey Department of Health, which is the governing body for this lead safety law. If, however, the property has a lead-free certificate, those inspections are no longer required as the property has been certified to be lead-free, either through remediation or a comprehensive lead inspection. If you're buying older housing, plan and budget for compliance from day one. When it comes to municipal requirements, each town may have different forms and inspections that they require. This can range from those needed for a continued certificate of occupancy to what is permissible for a rental rate increase. From a state perspective, there are no statewide rent controls in place yet, but they are often present in our larger urban communities within New Jersey. Those cities may often have increased percentage caps and notification periods that you need to adhere to when you're looking to increase the rent amount, even if the current rental rate is well below market value. What is a consistent requirement within every town in the state is the need to obtain a fire safety inspection, most commonly conducted by the town's Fire Prevention Bureau. As I cautioned earlier, you need to check with the specific town where your rental property is located to see exactly what they require and when. And last on our list are tenant screening laws called the Fair Chance in Housing Act, or FCHA. Effective January 1st of 2022, New Jersey restricts when and how landlords may consider criminal history. Generally speaking, you cannot ask about criminal history or run a criminal background check until after we've issued a conditional offer of housing, which typically occurs after we've done the credit and income verification. As part of this act, New Jersey has put guardrails on what you may consider from that criminal conviction and the notices that you must provide. It's also worth mentioning that New Jersey, along with most other states, employ what are called testers, who pose as renters to see how landlord and realtors respond to these various anti-discrimination compliance areas. The reality is, you won't know you're talking to a tester until it's too late. So always do the right thing and operate within the framework of the law, and more importantly, be ethical in your daily practices. Now, we've explored quite a bit already, but we'd be remiss if we didn't highlight some of the things that can go wrong and how we can reduce the odds of that happening. First on the list, vacancy and pricing misses. This is probably the number one mistake we see landlords make. It's critical that when we're putting a property on the market, we have clarity in how the market is trending, what inventories look like, and how does the property being marketed compare to the competition in terms of living space and upgrades. Overpricing the rental by even $50 a month can add weeks of vacancy and lost revenue. It's imperative that we study comps, seasonality, and what concessions are being offered by other landlords, especially if the market is trending on the slower side. It's usually much better financially to lower the rental amount than to sit on a vacancy with zero revenue coming in while mortgage, taxes, and insurance payments are going out. Next, poor screening processes. Skipping income verification or calling a personal reference instead of an employer is risky, and illegal screening, which would include asking early criminal history questions or even refusing a prospective tenant because of a housing voucher or emotional support animal creates liability. A thorough screening process evaluates factual items such as their rent-to-income ratios, their work history, their credit scores, payment and balance history on outstanding credit, and landlord verification as examples. To be compliant with the Fair Housing Act, you need to use a written compliant criteria list or system each and every time you do a screening. Next, not keeping on top of maintenance. Deferred maintenance commonly turns into emergency calls or frequent unit turnovers. Do a thorough move-in condition report with photos, schedule seasonal servicing of your HVAC systems, have gutters cleaned, and frequently test fire safety equipment. Give your tenants clear channels to report issues when they arise and ensure issues affecting habitability and living conditions are addressed quickly. In our experience, one of the most common reasons why tenants withhold rent payments is out of frustration from maintenance items they've reported to the landlord that were not taken care of prior to that property being turned over to our care. So staying on top of maintenance can help ensure more timely rent payments. Next, avoid security deposit disputes. Without dated photos or videos, invoices for work performed, and itemized statements, you're likely going to lose a deposit dispute with the tenant if you have to go to court, and you may have to pay penalties. Ideally, you would have a comprehensive move-in property condition report and a corresponding move-out property condition report, clearly reflecting the property condition at both points in time. These reports will be provided to the tenant, along with an itemized breakdown of what items are identified as tenant-caused damage. And in many cases, you'll also need to make deductions for normal wear and tear of items such as paint, carpet, and appliances. So this process can get complicated very quickly. Missing paperwork. Missing landlord registration, lead certificates, or truth in renting proof can sink your position in court. Keep a compliance binder, whether it's physical or digital, with all the required documents easily accessible. In fact, if you don't have an executed lease and a proof of landlord registration, you can't even file for an eviction within landlord-tenant court in New Jersey. Avoid fair housing complaints. Casual comments such as "no kids," "quiet professionals only," "no Section 8" can become costly comments if a prospective tenant files a complaint against you. Always use neutral, property-based language and keep to an ethical and professional standard process. An easy test you can do on your marketing listings is to simply read it out loud and ask yourself, or even someone else, if any of the content speaks to a protected class, and referring back to that NJLAD. If it does, you need to make some changes in that wording. Remember that fines start at $23,000 and go up from there. Lastly, don't get surprised by rent control. Buying into a rent-controlled town without modeling what the allowable increases are in your pro forma could turn it from black to red. Always confirm the town's rules around rental increases before you go under contract on a property or convert your primary home into a rental. The same holds true with what inspections are required for that town and what their frequency is. So we've covered a lot of ground so far. We've reviewed the benefits of investing in rental properties, what can go wrong with being a landlord, some of the various laws that impact landlords, and now we come to a few pretty basic summary questions that we need to ask ourselves to ensure that being a landlord is the right business for me. First, do I want to run a small business? Right? Being a landlord is customer service plus facilities maintenance, plus legal compliance, plus accounting, and the list goes on. Things will break and must be repaired, and there will be a host of expenses for the property, some planned and some unexpected. Are you financially ready for those business expenses? Next, can I commit to New Jersey's rules? If the New Jersey laws against discrimination, Anti-Eviction Act, Security Deposit Law, Lead Safety, and Fair Chance in Housing Act all sound like too much, consider hiring a professional management firm from day one and including those expenses in your pro forma to see how the property will net cash flow. Do I have the right team? If you're going to take on the management yourself, do you have a team in place? That team should include a landlord-tenant attorney, an accountant, licensed contractors to service the property, and potentially realtors to help you market on the multiple listing service, or MLS, if that makes sense for your property when you have a vacancy. Can I be fair, firm, and consistent? Courts and tenants, for that matter, respond well to landlords who follow the law, have written policies, give proper notices, and document everything, but are not authoritarian. Now, if you're at a stage right now where you're asking yourself, do I really want to handle all of this myself? The good news is that you don't have to, and that's exactly why many landlords will choose to partner with a professional property management company. While the services may vary from management firm to management firm, here are some of the main benefits a property manager can bring to the table for you. They help keep you compliant. Property managers stay current on the various federal, state, and municipal laws that govern rental properties and landlord-tenant relations. They also ensure that your leases, notices, and screening processes are legally compliant and consistently performed, thus reducing your risk of costly mistakes. They manage the tenant screening and placement process using standardized, lawful criteria and professional screening tools to find qualified tenants while minimizing discrimination risk. Most property managers will also manage the marketing, showings, lease signings, and move-in inspections, really thus providing a comprehensive end-to-end solution for you that you don't have to be involved in. That's a win-win. Next, they manage all the maintenance. Instead of you taking that 2 a.m. emergency call, they have a team in place of licensed contractors. They track the repairs, they schedule preventative maintenance, and ensure the vendor is paid on a timely basis. The best part is they have a team of trusted vendors in place that can take care of all those maintenance needs, so you don't have to build that list. They take care of all the various accounting and reporting tasks. Property managers handle the rent collection, the late fees, security deposits, owner distributions, and most commonly with online portals so that you have real-time visibility into the income and expenses, and they take care of all the accounts payable activities and ensure vendors are paid on time for their work performed. In addition, they also manage end-of-year tasks such as issuing 1099s or generating monthly and year-end reports for you and your accountant. In the inevitable, they also coordinate evictions and provide legal notices when needed. If a tenant defaults on their rent payments, professional managers know how to manage the process to get it resolved as quickly as possible and in accordance with the law. They save you time and bring you peace of mind. For landlords with full-time jobs, families, or multiple properties, management companies allow you to focus on what matters most, rather than dealing with midnight lockouts or piles of paperwork. This is especially important if you live in a different time zone or country. They build and foster relationships with tenants. Professional managers act as a buffer between you and the tenants, handling complaints, lease renewals, and routine communications, often leading to higher tenant satisfaction and lower turnover costs as tenants remain in place longer. In most cases, the landlord will have zero interactions with the tenant as the management company is handling everything for them. And lastly, they support portfolio scalability. If you want to grow from 1 unit to 10 or from 1 building to 5, property managers have systems, staff, and vendor networks that make scaling much easier than managing it all yourself. So, here are some final thoughts. Being a landlord in New Jersey, or any state for that matter, can be an excellent way to build long-term wealth. It does require that you approach it like a regulated business by learning the rules, setting up clear processes, and keeping healthy reserves for unexpected or even planned expenses. The most successful landlords use checklists, standard forms, and documented criteria, Plus, they also consult professionals early before a problem becomes a violation or a lawsuit. If you still feel energized by the idea of providing safe, compliant housing, and you're ready to master the core New Jersey rules, then you're likely a good fit to be a landlord. If not, that's useful clarity too. You can wait, or you can hire end-to-end management so you can capture the benefits of owning real estate while reducing the headaches of being a landlord. Doesn't that sound great? If you would like help managing your rental property or even evaluating a property that you're considering investing in, please reach out to us to schedule a no-cost consultation and let us show you how we are opening doors to a better life.